Monday morning, the phone recognized me before I recognized myself. A small square of my face floated in the corner, a circle spun, and my bank app opened with the politeness of a hotel door. The number on the main page didn't shout, it just glowed there, quiet and clinical. 0% uttered. I refreshed because that's what you do when you don't like reality. Pull the lever again and hope the slot changes. It didn't. My coffee cooled. The living room clock chewed through seconds. Somewhere down the block a dog collar jingled like loose change. I used to call that account my retirement bucket. Slow money. The kind you don't brag about, you just feed and forget. Last week I handed it to my son with the same care I once passed him the car keys in a grocery parking lot, my fingers reluctant to let go. "I'll make it work for you, Dad," he said, sliding graphs across my kitchen table, tapping candlesticks like a conductor. No cowboy stuff. Diversified, hedged, safe. I wanted to believe I wasn't being a burden to my own future. I wanted to believe he was telling me the truth. The app coughed up a list of recent activity: utilities, groceries, pharmacy, little footprints of an ordinary life. At the bottom, a colder line: outgoing wire transfer. Full amount. No confetti. Just subtraction. I took a screenshot the way a tourist takes a picture of a place he never meant to visit. That's when I heard it, not a car. A statement. Low, expensive, the kind of engine note that doesn't rush because it never has to. Through the blinds I watched a new sedan slide into my son's driveway. Metallic paint the color of storm water. Temporary tags with the ink still brave. He stepped out with a smile I recognized from Little League, only brighter, like success had polished it. He ran a thumb along the chrome as if checking a fever. He didn't look toward my house. He didn't have to. The car said hello for him. I walked outside with the casualness of a man taking out recycling. "New ride?" I asked, aiming for neutral. "Lease," he said, quick as a reflex. "Company thing." His eyes flicked over my shoulder, doing math on what I might have seen, what I might say. "Hey, about the account. Don't freak. The money's not actually gone."
"It looks gone."
"It's just in a different basket," he said, waving the air like he was shooing a fly. "Custodial allocation. Off app. These platforms lag. If you keep checking, you'll only stress yourself out. Give it a week. Let me work." A week is a long time when you're standing on a ledge. "Sure," I said. The word tasted like I had borrowed it from a stranger. He patted the roof as if blessing it. He told me about torque numbers I wouldn't remember and a safety package that watched the road for you. I nodded, the way fathers nod when their sons speak a language they taught themselves. Back inside, I set my phone face down on the table and stared at the ring my coffee mug had left, a map of something spilled and drying. I picked the phone up again, turned off push notifications, and wrote the time down on a yellow pad's 9:17 a.m. Then I added the wire details in my neatest handwriting, the kind I saved for school permission slips and mortgage checks. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't call anyone a thief. I just opened the junk drawer, found a small envelope, and slid the screenshot printout inside after my cheap home printer grudgingly gave it to me. The house sounded different after that. The clock louder, the refrigerator more self-important, the air conditioner clearing its throat. Fear, I learned, doesn't always come in screaming. Sometimes it walks in quietly when you've handed your keys to someone else and shut the door behind them. It wasn't the first time I'd handed him keys. Years before the app ever learned my face, our dinners came stapled to Sunday circulars. I kept a plastic binder with tabs, dairy, pantry, household, and a pair of dull scissors that chewed rather than cut. On double coupon Wednesdays, I'd stand under the white pharmacy lights while the register beeped like a happy heart monitor. "Buy one, get one," the cashier would call. And sometimes we'd stretch one pot roast into 3 nights by letting the potatoes do more of the talking. The kitchen smelled like minced onion and thrift. I wasn't ashamed. Thrift is just love with a calculator. We bought a washing machine on a store card with 18 months, no interest, and I marked payment dates on a wall calendar that still had last year's snowman. When my son's dorm bill pushed through the mail slot, I folded overtime into envelopes and told him not to worry about books. He worked some, yes, but I wanted him reading, not running plates. Community college, then state school. He sent home photos of new campuses and new words. I taped them to the refrigerator with magnets shaped like oranges. The night he made his pitch, we were eating the kind of chicken that goes on sale the week it expires. He talked while we chewed. "Dad, you're leaving money on the table," he said, flipping his phone landscape to show me a forest of green and red sticks. "I can manage it. You're not really a market guy." "No." I said, "I'm a keep the lights on guy. That's why you need me." He smiled with the persuasion people learn from YouTube. confident, warm, rehearsed. Look, no cowboy stuff. Basic momentum, covered calls, EDFs will ladder in, nothing crazy. Let me shift it into things that actually move. I thought of all the things I had moved for him. Boxes into apartments, couches upstairs, a life across years. The chicken cooled while he laid out terms I pretended to understand. Pride is a quiet spice. It sneaks into the sauce. I didn't want to be the father who slowed his son down, who made him explain simple things twice. He sent a link that night. Just a standard authorization, he texted. So I can execute without bugging you. The document was friendly and modern, the kind designed to make you feel clever for finishing it. My name already filled in. A little box labeled Trading Authorization Limited sat beside another that said cash movement between related accounts. I remember pausing at the second box, the way you linger at a yellow light. Then I initialed. I signed with the same pen I used for permission slips and field trip forms, as if this were just another outing I was allowing. I didn't read the rest. I trusted the headline. Weeks later, when the sedan whispered into his driveway and my app flattened to 0, the memory of that checkbox blinked behind my eyes like a faulty turn signal. It wasn't the font that hurt me. It was the part of me that wanted to be generous faster than I wanted to be careful. People warn you about the small print as if letters themselves are predators. In my experience, danger doesn't hide in fonts. It hides in love that refuses to slow down. I had given him the keys again, not to a car this time, but to the room in me that says yes before it asks questions. The statement should have been there. First Monday of the month, 8:00 a.m., like a train that prides itself on being on time. Your monthly statement is ready. I typed the bank's name into the search bar and got weather alerts, political flyers, coupons for tires, everything but the thing that pays for them. Spam empty, trash empty. I clicked into settings, a place I visit about as often as the attic, and found a rule I don't remember building forward any message with statement in the subject to my son's email, created 3 months ago. I took a screenshot. The phone made its fake camera noise as if I were taking a picture of a sunset. I deleted the rule and sat a moment with that particular quiet you only hear when trust slips a gear. Then I opened the brokerage app, the one he'd laddered in from, and got a polite wall password changed. A timestamp below at 20:14 a.m. last night. Forgot password. It offered, cheerful as a greeter. I tapped. The reset code offered to go to a phone number that wasn't mine and an email I didn't recognize. A mash of letters that could have been a license plate. I wrote both down on the yellow pad anyway. Data has a way of introducing itself later. Representative. I said into the broker's phone tree. After the flute stopped playing, a woman with Iowa kindness asked me for the last 4 digits of a card I no longer carry. It looks like your contact information was updated by an authorized party. She said, careful with the word authorized like it might crack. To restore access, we'll need a notarized form or an in-person visit with ID. I can also place a temporary account review if you believe there's unusual activity. Let's do the review, I said. And note this call. I spelled my name slowly, the way you do in hospitals and courtrooms. Back in the credit union app, I stopped scrolling for comfort and started scrolling for evidence. Under external transfers, breadcrumb trail appeared, small sums peeling off in neat lines over the last 6 weeks. ACH debit, Fedemleo Garadutech LC for $7.50, then the Tiller's 50, then 3,000. Like someone testing a fence before climbing it, mixed in a Zelle to FGLLC with a note field that read allocation. At the bottom, the big bite I already knew. Outgoing wire, North Star Investments LLC for everything else. 2 names, 2 buckets, same thirst. I wrote the Fed reference number next to the wire and underlined it. I printed the transfer history to PDF, then to paper, because paper behaves itself. The cheap printer warmed up like an old man getting out of a chair and spat the pages into my hand. I clipped them to the screenshot of the email rule and slid the stack into the envelope I'd started. The envelope had a bulge now, the kind that makes you either nervous or prepared depending on which side of the table you sit. On the kitchen counter, my son's spare house key lay in a dish with pennies and a church bulletin. I turned it over in my fingers, felt the teeth. Keys always look trustworthy, that's their trick. I set it back down and opened notes to start a running list labeled, What changed without Measy email forwarding rule? Deleted brokerage password. Changed at 20:14 a.m. Contact phone. Unknown transfers. FGLLC's recurring North Star's wired. I didn't call him. Not yet. Anger is loud, but truth is patient. I poured fresh coffee and left it black. The refrigerator kicked on, the same obedient hum it's had for years. Machines are easy, they do what you tell them. People leave trails. Every thief leaves footprints. Most of us just forget to turn on the light. Today, I found the switch. The car smelled like a promise someone else signed for. I'd never breathed real leather before. Our family cars were cloth. Crumb, catching bench seats that remembered fries and soccer cleats. In the half-light of the garage, the scent came warm and sweet, drifting over cold concrete and the old oil stains shaped like Florida. Dust floated in a slow parade through the beam of a single bulb. The dash idled with its own little galaxy. Soft LD's a screen that could show you more than any map ever did, buttons that clicked like good pens. He stood beside me, proud and casual at the same time. Trim package came with the upgraded sound. He said, tapping the door like he was knocking on opportunity. You can feel the bass in the seat. What I'm feeling is the leather, I said. Smells expensive. He laughed. Easy. Dealers pump it up. Half of it's chemistry. I ran a finger along the quilting on the seat. I remembered a different seat years ago, the minivan's fabric gone shiny where little legs had swung, Cheerios ground to dust into the fibers. That van had hauled science fair boards and broken lamps and the Christmas tree we bought when the lot was closing, and the man threw in an extra bundle of twine. Nice car, I said, and then let the sentence do what it wanted. What'd you buy it with? He didn't miss a beat. I did well, he said, smile tucked into his voice the way people tuck napkins. Couple of trades hit. Some options. I nodded like I knew. The garage hummed. A freezer in the corner. The slow tick of cooling metal from a neighbor's mower. You want to see the sound system? He asked. It syncs to your phone in under a second. Show me the glove box, I said. I've never seen one this fancy. He slid into the driver's seat and tapped something on the screen. The glove box opened itself with a little sigh. Inside, a black zippered pouch, the kind that makes paper feel official. He pulled it out and dropped it on the passenger seat between us. Registration, insurance card, all that, he said, flipping with one hand. A plastic sleeve showed a temporary registration with this month's date. There was a laminated insurance ID. A WEO, slip from the dealer, floor mats front plate bracket. Then an invoice, dealer logo fat at the top, the kind of number that never appears next to soup or socks. Under the invoice, clipped neatly, lay a photocopy of a form I recognized even before my name shouted from it. Trading authorization, limited. My pen stroked climbing the loop of the J, like it had that night at the kitchen table. The second box. The one I'd hovered over. Dark with inky. Cash movement between related accounts. He kept talking APR, loyalty incentive. How the lane, keep assist, almost drives for you. I let him narrate the features while I took a breath that didn't smell like leather anymore. I touched the edge of the page as if it might be hot. Then I leaned back, pulled out my phone, and snapped a picture with the sound off. The camera shutter still made a ghost of a click in my head. You okay, Dad? He asked, noticing the small weather in my face. Trying to decide if I'm a leather guy, I said. All these years I thought I was vinyl. He grinned, relieved to be on safe ground. You'll convert. Everybody does. I zipped the pouch and handed it back. We sat a second, listening to the car's quiet like it was practicing for a commercial. There were 100 words I could have chosen. Accusations, names, demands. Instead, I studied the stitch lines and let the silence expand. An empty stage with the lights already warm. He filled it with talk about torque and trim, and how the dealership coffee was better than you'd think. I walked home with my hands at my sides and the picture stored where pictures go. At the kitchen table, the envelope waited patient as a dog. I slid the new print into the stack and wrote garage in the margin of my notes. Silence, I learned, isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's the trap a performer builds for himself while you stand in the wings, counting the beats. The old branch still had the candy jar and the pen on a chain. A flag out front snapped once, then hung like a towel in August. Inside, the carpet smelled the way it always had, like paper and winter coats. A wall poster promised every $1. Purpose? I took a number and didn't sit. When the screen blinked A103, I stepped to a desk behind a glass half wall where a young woman with a badge that said May smiled like this was any Tuesday. I need a temporary lock, I said, laying my driver's license on the mat. Freeze the account. Block all ACH debits and external transfers until I say otherwise. She glanced at her screen, fingers moving with a speed that said she'd done this before. We can place a debit and ACH block on your checking and a transfer hold on the savings, she said. We can also add a verbal passcode to your profile so no one can change contact info without it. Do all of that, I said, and please restore e-statements to my email. They've been wandering. Her eyebrows lifted a notch. Just enough to register a story without asking for it. I'm also seeing we can set real-time alerts, Any ACH activity, any external link, any profile change. Yes, she toggled boxes, the way a nurse tightens straps before a ride. Okay, the holds are live. It may take a cycle for existing ACH to time out, but anything new should bounce. She'd paused. Do you want to unenroll Zelle and remove all external transfer links? Clean the slate, I said. Leave nothing that moves money without me. She printed a form the color of good intentions and slid it to me. I signed with the branch pen, the coil tugging my wrist like a reminder to stay. I can also file a fraud watch note on your profile, she said. It doesn't accuse anyone. It just makes us look twice. Please do. And note this, I did not authorize any change to my email forwarding or phone number. She nodded, typing. The printer chuffed out a receipt of changes. ACH block Owen. External transfers disabled. E-statements restored to ham my address. Alerts enabled profile ACH transfers. Verbal passcode set. I folded the paper into quarters and slipped it into the envelope I'd brought, the one that had been gaining weight at my kitchen table. Anything else you want me to review while I'm here? She asked. Show me the contact change history. I said it softly, like asking a favor in church. She clicked into a screen most customers never see. Mailing address updated online 6 weeks ago, she read. Phone number updated same day. And, she hesitated. There's a duplicate debit card issued last month. Duplicate. Same name as yours ending 4421. Mailed to the address on file at the time. She rotated the monitor. The address looked like my son's driveway, written in numbers. She printed the audit trail without me asking and slid it over. The line items stacked like fence posts. Channeled. Online, device mobile. IP, a string of dots and numbers that meant more to machines than to me. Cancel that card, I said. Issue nothing by mail if I need a card. I'll pick it up here with ID. Don't, she said, and the click of her mouse felt like a door closing from the inside. You might also consider placing a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. It makes new accounts harder to open. I will, I said, writing it on my yellow pad. Experian Equifax TransUnion. 1 year alert. We reset my email for statements and tested it. Her computer sent a test notice, and my phone buzzed with the kind of small victory that deserves more confetti than it gets. She handed me 2 more printouts, my current contact profile and the alert settings. Paper behaves itself. I slid them into the envelope until it refused to close, then pressed its flap down anyway, like tucking in a child who'd outgrown his bed. Outside, the flag snapped again, louder this time. I drew a breath that reached the bottom of my lungs. Access isn't a password, it's oxygen. Today I got some back. The office sat between a laundromat and a nail salon, the kind of place you don't notice until you need it. The laundromat's door kept chiming, warm air and detergent smell rolling out in soft waves. Dryers blinked their red digits through the glass like far-off taillights. A cardboard sign in the lawyer's window said Will's Small Business Consumer Matters. I pushed the door and a bell on a spring announced me to nobody in particular. Inside, 2 chairs that had done their years, a ficus that had learned to live on very little, and a framed diploma with a gold seal. A woman stepped out from the back, sleeves rolled, hair in a practical knot. Elveries Mirel was stenciled on a door behind her. She had the posture of someone who'd heard everything twice and wrote it down once. I need someone to speak for me, I said, laying my bulging envelope on the reception counter. For a while, I should stop being the one talking. She eyed the envelope the way a doctor eyes a swollen joint. Let's sit, she said. Her office smelled like paper and lemon oil. A small fan turned its head right left as if disagreeing with us. She clicked a pen and waited, the quiet kind of wait that pulls the right thread out of you. I told her about the logins that weren't mine, the wire with the proud reference number, the car that smelled like a promise. I told her I hadn't shouted yet. She nodded at the right places and let silence do the heavy lifting. First, she said when I ran out of breath, you did well not to confront him. If what you're telling me is accurate, we're looking at a blend of authorization and overreach. Paper will matter. Timing will matter more. She flipped open a yellow legal pad, twin to the one on my kitchen table. Homework. She numbered a list. 1, keep gathering. Screenshots are fine, but also request the full audit logs from your bank and brokerage. IP addresses, device IDs, contact change history, authorization history. You've already frozen ACH and outside transfers.
Yes. Good.
2, print everything. Back it up. Don't edit or annotate the files themselves. Make separate notes. 3, no more direct conversations about the money. Holidays, weather, sports, fine. Money, no. If he asks, you're sorting paperwork at the bank. That's it. 4, we send preservation letters to the broker, the bank, and, if needed, The dealership, so no one loses records. She looked at me over the top of the pad. I can make calls for you, but sometimes the first calls get more when they come from the account holder. You tell them you're worried about unauthorized profile changes and need the contact change audit and transaction logs. Use those words. Then forward anything you get to me. I slid my envelope across her desk. She peeled it open like a careful archaeologist. The printouts fanned out the forwarding rule screenshot. The duplicate debit card audit, the external transfer list with FamilyDrama LLC stepping up its appetite, the wire to North Star Investments LLC, the photo of the glove box packet with my authorization copy clipped behind the car invoice. She lined them up in a neat grid. You've done half my job already, she said. What you don't have, we'll pull. Do we go to the police? I asked. The word felt heavy coming out, too big for the room between a laundromat and a nail salon. Maybe, but not today. She tapped the copy of my signature. You signed this. He'll say you empowered him. Our lane is limits and duty, what he could do versus what he did. We build the timeline. We show cash movement outside the scope of the agreement. We keep it civil as long as we can. Less noise, more leverage. Your goal isn't to ruin him. It's to stop the bleeding and restore what can be restored. She reached for a business card and wrote a name on the back. This is Owen Klein, CPA CFF, forensic accountant, former IRS, then private practice. He's patient. He can trace small dollar skims and big wires with the same attention, map out where money went after the LCs, and tell me whether we're seeing trading losses, siphoning, or a car-shaped vanity project. He'll need your statements, what you have and what we'll request. A forensic accountant, I repeated, tasting the phrase. It sounded like a detective who wore reading glasses. He'll also pull Secretary of State filings on those LCs, look at registered agents, addresses, date stamps. If your son opened things in your name or moved funds to entities he controls, we'll know. We may not need court to get most of it back if we're smart about the door we knock on. She slid a simple engagement letter across the desk. No fanfare. 1 page. I signed with a pen that wasn't on a chain. 2 more things, she said. Place a fraud alert with the bureau if you haven't. On my list, I said. Doing it tonight. And remember, you're not losing by staying quiet. You're setting the table. When we finally serve him papers or a demand, I want him to read his own trail like a mirror. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, a dryer in the laundromat beeped completion, a small bell of victory. I watched a woman open the round door and breathe in the clean heat of her clothes. I could feel my own breath deepen. Silence wasn't cowardice. It was cover, the kind you fight under until you're ready to move. She after INVOIS rishi PTS? And slappy es negitas. I started with the boxes that know more about a man than his friends do. Shoe boxes with rubber bands fossilized around them. An accordion file labeled Texas 2017 with a broken tab. A drawer that had become a museum of warranties nobody honors. Oil change receipts curled like autumn leaves. Home insurance renewals with a cartoon house smiling bravely. I spread them across the table in the order only I understood. Auto, home, bank, other, and fed them, one by one, to the flappid scanner that complained like an old dog. By midnight the house was a paper storm. The refrigerator hummed louder as the neighborhood went quiet. A porch light across the street blinked off, then on again, the way doubts do. I made coffee I didn't need and kept moving the highlighter like a miner's lamp. Dates, amounts, names. When my eyes blurred, I read out loud to keep the numbers from shifting. On the yellow pad, I built a spine timeline left to right, players top to bottom, me, Credit Union Brokerage, Family Growth LLC, North Star Investments LLC, Dealer, Owen Klein, CPA CFF, the letters that meant he liked both math and footprints. Answered my email before dawn with a calendar link and a list of what would make his day: CSV exports, PDFs of statements, any invoices connected to the car. By lunch we were in his office, a quiet room with a second monitor turned toward me, the way barbers turn mirrors so you can see the back. Okay, he said, hands steepled, voice like a teacher on the second week of school. Let's lay rails. He dragged a window left credit union. Commercial checking, FamilyDrama due to LC, ending 7/7/23. He lined them up until the columns of dates married each other. Watch the rhythm, he said, and I did. Pits begin 6 Fridays ago, do 750 of 253,000, probing shots at your perimeter, then 2 larger pools labeled FGLC allocation. And here, he tapped a cell, your wire to North Star. He slid the dealer invoice on top like acetate. Look at the date stamped Saturday, 11:06 a.m., Friday, 4:32 p.m., end of day, Saturday morning. He pulled up the LLC account, cashier's checkout to manufacturer, financial services for the exact down payment on this invoice. Not a penny of slippage, the rest financed. He zoomed out so the arrows felt inevitable. You, FGLC dealer. The line glowed in my head like runway lights. The car's leather smell returned and soared. Who owns Family Growth? I asked, though my stomach already knew. Owen had another tab open. Secretary of State, business search. He typed with the speed of someone who has been disappointed by many states and their websites. Here we go, he said, leaning back so I could see. Family Growth LLC, organized 3 months ago. Organizer managered my son, registered 8 agent for service his wife. Mailing address their house. The screen didn't gloat, it just sat there being true. I stared at the words agent for service and thought about the spare key in my dish with the pennies. Doors everywhere, and I had been busy handing out ways to open them. Owen clicked again. There's also a merchant services account linked here. Stripe, looks like. No activity yet. And a business credit card application pending decision pulled last week. He pointed at a faint line item on the LLC ledger. Application fee. So the company is real, I said. It's a bucket, he said. Companies are just buckets with names. The question is what the bucket's for. Trading losses? Possible. But the timing, he tapped the down payment again. That's not trading. That's purchase. He kept his tone kind. The way you tell a child the sky is going to rain. Your signature on the trading authorization muddies the water for a police report today. But the cash movement outside the trading scope to an entity he controls into personal use. Car, that's leverage. We'll map 6 months backward, 6 months forward. If there are other buckets, we'll find them. I nodded, feeling the long night in my bones. He printed a neat packet, each page stamped with a tiny digital fingerprint that said when and where we'd found it. Paper behaves itself. He also saved everything to a shared folder with a name even I could remember. Back home, the boxes looked smaller. I slid Owen's packet into the envelope that had stopped closing 3 days ago and set a heavy book on top of it like a lid. In the quiet, I could finally name the thing that had been draining me. It wasn't just the balance. It was watching trust take the same road the money did, turn where it turned, and disappear at the same address. I said yes to dinner the way you say yes to weather. You don't argue with what's already rolling in. The grill in his backyard breathed thin blue ribbons into June air. String lights waited for dusk to make them useful. A plastic slide sat in the corner like a small boat retired to a quiet harbor. The Seddon glowed along the fence line, a trophy that didn't mind being looked at. Burgers or steak? He asked, tongues like a conductor's wand. Whatever's on sale, I said, old reflex. While he talked marinades with a seriousness usually saved for elections, I checked my shirt pocket. Voice memos, big red circle. Mara had been clear when I asked, in our state, you can record a conversation you're part of. Don't go fishing, just be present. I tapped record, slid the phone back, and tucked a napkin behind it so the mic wouldn't rasp against cotton. The click was as soft as a blink. If truth had a volume knob, I turned it to low and let it sit there. We ate off paper plates. He opened a cooler with ice that sounded like glass wind chimes. His wife poured a Chardonnay that smelled like apples and new plans. Inside, through the kitchen window, I could see a tray with mail and a thin folder on the island. Fami Jirabdushi LC peeking from the tab like a name tag at a conference. He brought up the markets before I did. Portfolio's shaping up, he said, as if the word portfolio were a pet he'd taught tricks. He flipped a burger with the confidence of a man narrating his own highlight reel. Rotation into momentum names has been clean. Covered calls are juicing yield. Honestly, Dad, we're on pace for an 18% quarter if the macro doesn't throw a tantrum. 18, I said, passing him the salt like it had anything to do with any of it.
That's a number. Look,
he went on. The way I structured this, the retirement allocation isn't just parked. It's working. We laddered entries, and I've got dry powder in the LLC to deploy when spreads widen. He took a bite, chewed his own words down to silence, then kept going. It's all about liquidity. Liquids are good, I said, looking at the Chardonnay. He laughed. No, I mean cash efficiency. Sometimes you need to bridge. He tapped the side of his glass with a fingernail. Like, say, an opportunity needs capital today, and the broker's settlement lags 2 days. So you front from a related bucket and then backfill when the trade closes. That's how you move fast. His wife wiped a dot of mustard from the corner of her mouth. He's built a real company, she said, nodding toward the house. I'm just the registered agent. Paperwork. Somebody has to open the certified letters. Somebody does, I said. He was warming to his own narrative now, heat from the grill reflecting in the shine of his eyes. Take the car, he said with an almost apologetic grin. It's not vanity. It's optics. When you're courting investors, you don't roll up in a beater. It's a business asset, marketing. And it was temporary anyway. I advanced against the retirement float because the dealer wanted a cashier's check on a Saturday. And by Monday, the options payout was going to hit. I backfilled. It's all smooth. The words sat in the air like just caught fish, still moving, obvious what they were. Advanced against the retirement float. I felt them land in my pocket where the mic was listening like a patient dog. Sounds agile, I said. I reached for the platter, gave him the space to talk. People fill silence the way water finds low places. He kept pouring himself into it. Look, Dad, you gave me authorization. I'm not some Reddit cowboy. Everything's documented. Family growth is clean. Taxes are clean. You just have to stop worrying. Don't keep checking the app. That kind of anxiety kills performance. Anxiety kills a lot of things, I said. We ate the rest as if food could be a truce. The string lights woke up one by one. A neighbor's dog had opinions about a squirrel and shared them. When the plates were stacked and the grill lid closed with a respectful sigh, I excused myself to wash my hands. In the hallway, I breathed once, deep and even, then tapped stop. The waveform froze like a seismograph after the earth remembers itself. At home, I didn't play it. I renamed the file with the care of a man labeling a child's first day photo dinnered. Backyard 19-14. I copied it to a thumb drive, then to a folder Owen had shared, then to a hard drive that makes its own hum. I sent Mara a 3-word email, got a statement. She answered in 5, save original. I'll transcribe. I slid the thumb drive into the envelope that had become a book, pressed the flap down, and this time it stayed. Truth doesn't need to raise its voice. It only needs to be kept. The clerk slid a rubber mat toward me and straightened the little sign that said notary on duty. Behind her, boxes of bubble mailers stacked like orderly clouds. I laid down a single page with a title that made my throat feel larger than it was: Revocation of Trading Authorization. The language was plain on purpose. I didn't ask the paper to be brave for me. I asked it to be clear. State your name, she said, palm on a stamp the size of a biscuit. I said it. The sound felt steadier than last week. She compared signatures, old me and current me, then asked me to lift my right hand and swear that the signature on the authorization was mine and that this revocation was mine. Too, I did. Her stamp bit the page, ink and pressure and a circle of certainty. She added a raised seal that turned paper into something with a spine. I took a picture from my records, slipped the original into a rigid mailer, and addressed it to the brokerage, the way you address a letter to a past version of yourself, carefully, legibly, with no room for misunderstanding. Certified mail, return receipt. Mara would send her own notice by email and fax, but I wanted the kind with a green card that comes back wearing somebody else's pen marks. On the sidewalk, I breathed the cold from the copy as if it were a field after rain. At the branch, the manager knew me by now. Artitan, his tag read, square as a doorframe. We stood at his desk while sunlight made a rectangle on the carpet. I need to go beyond holds, I said. I want the account to refuse to move, unless I'm standing here to move it. He nodded like a coach who's happy to hear the right play called. We can set branch only wires, he said. No outgoing wire unless you're in person. New pays require a 48-hour cool-off and a phone call back to your passcode line. You already have the verbal passcode. We'll add a transaction phrase. Used only once in person, changed each visit. We'll also require 2 signatures on any cashier's check over your threshold. You picked the threshold. 500, I said. I wanted inconvenience more than I wanted speed. He smiled with that banker's laugh that says the number surprised him, but not enough to argue. Done? His typing sounded like rain finding the roof. Also, I said, lock online profile changes. Anything, address, phone? Email and branch only. Locked, he said. Then, after a beat, if you'd like, we can add a trusted contact. Someone we can call if we see elder exploitation flags. They don't get access, they get awareness. Put Attorney Alvarez, I said. He spelled it twice. He printed another sheet that behaved itself, branch, only wires Owen. New pay cool-off 48ers high value cashier's check dual sig 500. Profile changes in branch only. Trusted contact on file. I folded it into quarters the way I've always folded good news. Small enough to carry, large enough to see when I need it. At home, I made tea I didn't sweeten and set up camp at the kitchen table again, but this time the work was shorter, cleaner. I went to Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, and placed credit freezes one by one, answering questions only my life would know: which street I once lived on, which bank I didn't borrow from. The pages ended with polite confirmations and pines that I wrote on actual paper and slid into the envelope that had turned into a ledger of me. I froze check systems, too, so no one could sprout a new checking account in my name like a weed after rain. Then I added an IRS IPN to my list for tax season and turned on a block for SA online services. Small doors quietly locked. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt oxygen return. The house looked the same. Clock still chewing seconds, refrigerator still clearing its throat, but something in the air had widened. I emailed Mara copies of the notarized revocation and the branch printouts. She wrote back beautiful. Boundaries first, arguments second. Owen replied with a thumbs up and a line of arrows marching forward. People say boundaries keep others out. Some do. The better ones keep you in, inside your own dignity, inside the room where you're the one who turns the lights on and off. I sealed another envelope, scrawled a label I could read without glasses, and stacked it with the rest. A father's gift to himself isn't a speech or a scene. It's a line no one else draws for him, drawn dark enough to see at night. He came over fast enough to leave the engine ticking. The knock wasn't a knock, it was a drumbeat. I opened the door and he said it before hello. You don't trust me. I stepped aside so he could bring his heat into the living room. The couch remembered him from cartoons and flu days. He didn't sit. I trust paper, I said, and clocks. They don't have moods. He laughed without smiling. You froze the accounts. You revoked authorization. You put the bank on some kind of war footing. What do you think I am? I set a thin stack on the coffee table, each page in a clear sleeve, the way people protect photographs of the dead. On top, external transfers. CRD2NOL Jarbaluchi LC, date stepping up like a ladder. Under that, the wire to North Star with the Fed reference number underlined in neat ink. Then the dealer invoice, and next to it the temporary registration. And behind that, the photocopy from his glove box trading authorization, limited with my name, and the little box checked cash movement between related accounts. I think these are facts, I said. And facts don't care who we are. He paced once, then again, hands in his hair like he was trying to keep his thoughts from leaving. This is insane, he said. Dad, I'm trying to make your money work. I told you not to watch the app, it lags. You're stressing over shadows. I slid one more page forward. Owen's printout of the timeline, the arrows in simple black MIG FGLC dealer's cashier's check. Sat 11:06 a.m. day. You moved retirement funds into an LLC you control. I said, my voice steady like I'd practiced on the drive home from the bank. Agent for service, your wife. You used that bucket to make a down payment on a car. You changed contact info at 2:14 a.m. You issued a duplicate debit card to your address. These aren't shadows. He stopped pacing. The heat in him found a chair and sat down without asking. His jaw worked once, then softened. I was going to backfill. He said, the word's small for once. There was an options play settling Monday. The dealer wanted a cashier's check Saturday. I fronted from the family bucket and I was going to put it back. It's optics, Dad. When you're courting investors, you don't show up in a clunker. I was trying to make you more. His voice trembled on the word more. He stared at the registration like it might rearrange itself if he loved it hard enough. I signed a limited trading authorization, I said. Not a permission slip for whatever felt urgent. Limits are part of love. They always have been. I let the quiet stand there between us and do its job. Here's where we are. I've put branch-only wires, cool-offs on new pays, and a verbal passcode the bank won't say out loud. I've frozen my credit and revoked authorization at the broker. A lawyer and a forensic accountant are building the map. We can keep this civil. That's my preference. He looked up. There was a boy in the look, the one who used to bring me permission slips and ask for rides. What does civil mean? He asked. It means you unwind the car funding and any personal use from the LLC, return principal to the retirement account, cover any taxes and fees your moves created, and sign an acknowledgement that no further transfers happen without me sitting in the room. 10 business days. No speeches, no police, no public shaming. We do it clean with signatures, or we do it formal with letters. Your choice decides the door we use. He swallowed. The clock on the wall chewed another minute. Outside, a delivery truck sighed at the curb and moved on. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said finally, the edges of the sentence fraying. I thought I was helping. People who break your windows often call it a breeze. They point to the fresh air and ask you to thank them. I stacked the pages back into their sleeves and slid the bundle toward him. Pick a door, I said, and my voice didn't rise. Love doesn't spend other people's money and call it faith. Mara clicked submit like a nurse pushes a morphine button. Calm, exact. The screen blinked, and a case number appeared with the indifference of a license plate. Complaint civil. Application for temporary restraining order in order to show cause. We asked the court to freeze Family Growth LLC's accounts, to bar transfers, to preserve records, to keep the car from being retitled or sold, and to make everyone hold still long enough for the truth to catch up. My declaration sat behind it. Dates, exhibits, the slow parade of paper I'd trained to march in order. The clerk's office smelled like envelopes in winter. A stamp came down, filed 8:43 a.m., and the packet slid back heavier for having been seen. Exhibits wore their letters like jerseys: bank transfer history, B, brokerage audit log, C, dealer invoice, D, photo of the glove box authorization, Owen's timeline, F, a transcript excerpt from the backyard dinner where Advance Against Retirement float walked out of his mouth and onto paper. Mara tucked the copies into a Redwell and handed me nothing which felt correct. Today I wasn't the speaker, I was the fact. By noon we were in a courtroom that could have been a library if you removed the seal above the judge. A bailiff said our names like he was reading from a program. The judge had kind eyes and a pen that made blue lines mean something. Mara spoke the way she writes, spare, precise, the verbs doing the lifting. Your Honor, we are not asking for fireworks, she said. We are asking for a pause. There is evidence of fund movement from a retiree's account into an entity controlled by his son and daughter, in law followed by personal use disbursements. We seek a narrow, time-limited freeze and preservation of records. She placed E on the lectern. Owen's arrows looked smaller under courtroom light, but not less sure. Opposing counsel wasn't there, it was an ex parte request. That made the air feel thinner, like mountain weather beautiful. But you watch your step. The judge read silently for long stretches, the only sound the pen and the clock. I watched his eyes land on the phrase agent for servicey spouse. Then on the Fed reference number I'd underlined in my own careful hand. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. All right? He said finally, voice level is a carpenter's tool. On the papers before me, the court finds a sufficient showing for temporary relief. The court will issue a TRO restraining transfers or disbursements from accounts held by or for Family Growth LLC, prohibiting sale or encumbrance of the subject vehicle, and ordering preservation of records with notice to financial institutions. Order to show cause set 2 weeks from today on the request for a preliminary injunction. His pen moved. The order took on ink the way a wound takes on air. The bailiff handed us copies still warm. The language wasn't angry, it was exact. Service instructions. A list of things one may not do until further order of the court. Dates that meant time had a shape again. In the hallway, the fluorescence hummed like an old hymn. Mara dialed Owen. We're live, she said. Send the notice letters and the order to the banks and the broker. Today. By 3 o'clock my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. A man introduced himself. Last name Sullivan, the kind that has seen both golf courses and depositions. I represent your son and Family Growth LLC, he said, every syllable iron. We received the order. In light of the family dynamics here, my clients prefer to pursue a confidential mediation and an orderly unwind rather than litigate this in open court. We can make ourselves available within days. Mara listened on speaker, eyes on me. I could hear my son breathing on a second line, or maybe I only wanted to. We're open to talking, I said, my voice the same one I use when I fold towels. We'll keep the order in place while we do. Of course, Sullivan said, and the line clicked back to dial tone. We stood in the hall while people with other kinds of trouble passed by. Mara slid the signed order into her Redwell. Soft is fine, she said. We're not lost. Justice doesn't always raise its volume. Sometimes it writes your name in blue, sets a date, and waits for everyone else to catch up. We met in a room built to keep tempers from echoing. Soft carpet. A round table that made it hard to point. A lamp that pretended to be a sunset. The mediator, gray suit, softer voice, set a bowl of mints between us and reminded everyone that what was said here stayed here. My son studied the wood grain the way boys study their shoes after a fall. His wife kept her hands folded like prayer had a handle. Sullivan did the throat, clearing for them. My clients are here in good faith, he said, his tie the color of calm. Mara nodded once. She didn't bring thunder. She brought a Redwell and a clock. Owen sat up at the end of the table, laptop feeding a screen that washed the room pale. I'll be quick, he said, as if truth were impatient. He pulled up columns that had lost their mystery for me, dates marching, amounts saluting. Source account, retirement, savings. He began. Movement pattern. Weekly ACH to Family Growth LLC, 1 wire to North Star Investments LLC from FGLC, 2 outbound streams, 1 cashier's check to manufacturer, financial services on the vehicle, invoice, date, and recurring ACH payments to credit card issuer, personal card ending other 95. He didn't look at my son when he said personal. He looked at the screen, the way a doctor looks at the chart, not the wound. He zoomed. Arrows grew like veins. Retirement GFG LLC, dealer credit card. The wire to North Star shows no subsequent investment entries in the brokerage account we reviewed. He added, funds appear to have remained off platform. He changed slides. The Secretary of State page arrived like a weather report. FGLC organized 3 months ago. Manager, your son. Agent for service, your daughter-in-law. Mailing address, their residence. The mediator nodded small to show she was keeping up. My son cleared his throat, but no words came. His wife blinked slowly, as if that might thin the air. Mara slid a thin plastic sleeve across the table. Dealer file, she said. Produced yesterday. Inside, a photocopy with dealer letterhead, customer consent to use third-party funds. Under the title, my name in someone else's hand. A clipped rectangle where a notary block should have been. The signature looked like mine the way a photograph looks like a painting. Close enough for hallway distance. Wrong when you stand in front of it. That consent came to the dealer via email, Mara said, tapping a date in the corner. Metadata shows it originated from a device on your home network at 9:42 a.m. The IP doesn't match Mr. Dotto's devices. The sender account, she turned the page. It belongs to Mrs. Dotto. It was a placeholder, his wife said quickly, voice steady like a bridge over water. They needed something to move the process along. He was going to come in and sign the final paperwork. Mara didn't raise hers. There is no final paperwork with his signature, she said. There is a purchase order, a cashier's check, and this consent with a notary block blank. The bank's signature card and the broker's authorization file don't match this pen stroke. She slid Owen a glance. And the timing places retirement funds within the transaction chain. My son finally looked up, wet rim.
I wasn't stealing,
he said, quiet and shaking. I was moving fast. I meant to pay it back when the options hit. Intent is a future, Owen said gently. This is the past. The mediator leaned in, palms light on the table. We're not assigning criminal labels today, she said. We're deciding how to unwind. Mara laid out terms like silverware. Unwind the vehicle funding through the dealer or lender. Reimburse the retirement account for every dollar touched plus fees and tax gross up. Repay personal credit card paydowns sourced from the LLC. Stipulate that no further transfers occur. And sign a written acknowledgement of limits going forward. We'll keep the court's order in place while the unwind happens, she said. Deadlines, not drama. Sullivan asked for a caucus. They stepped into a smaller room that smelled like coffee and decisions. I stayed under the office light and watched dust float through the projector beam. It looked like time itself, visible for once. They came back 20 minutes older. Sullivan cleared his throat again. We'll agree to unwind the vehicle and reimburse principal within 10 business days, he said. We want confidentiality. Confidentiality is fine, Mara said. As long as the timeline isn't. My son didn't meet my eyes. He didn't have to. The screen had already done the looking for both of us. Ink can lie for a while. Time won't. They slid a term sheet across the table like a tray in a hospital. Sterile necessary, nobody pretending this was dinner. Sullivan spoke first. Here's our proposal, he said, finger-tapping bullet points as if they were rail ties. A 1, proceeds from sale of the vehicle, applied to restore principal. A 2 of balance reimbursed on a set schedule, equal payments over 6 months, wired to the retirement account. A 3 fees and taxes addressed at year end by a CPA of mutual choosing. C4 of confidentiality. C5 dissolved family growth LLC after unwind. My son stared at the laminate, not the words. His wife nodded on the parts that involved forms. Mara read, the quiet kind of rid that finds splinters. Dates, she said, circling emptiness. No dates mean no promises. Owen added arrows on the printout the way he always does, making time visible. Sale within 30 days. Sullivan amended quickly. First reimbursement within 10 business days, to match what we discussed. Monthly thereafter. The mediator looked at me. I looked back at my son and tried to see both versions. The boy who brought me permission slips and the man who taught himself how to move money faster than honesty travels. This is close, I said, but not done. Mara slid a clean page in front of me. I wrote like a man measuring a frame so the door will hang straight. Add these, I said, and laid them down one at a time. Mandatory financial counseling, not a podcast, real appointments with a counselor we agree on, 6 sessions minimum. Budgeting ethics, conflicts of interest. Completion letter to our lawyer. I didn't raise my voice. You built a bucket and called it family. You need someone who isn't me to talk to you about buckets. My son's jaw tightened, then eased. He didn't meet my eyes, which was its own kind of meeting. A family apology? I said next. The words were heavier than they looked. Not public, not a performance. Around the table where we used to pass bread. You'll say plainly what happened. I used Dad's retirement funds for personal purposes without authorization. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. I will respect the boundaries we've signed. You'll say it to the people who were raised by the same roof. And you'll hear them. The room breathed differently after that. Paper rustled. The mediator's pen made a small note that sounded bigger than it was. Structural changes, Mara added, picking up my line. Removal of our client's name from any business materials. Resignation of your son as manager of FGLC within 5 days. Dissolution within 45. No new entities using our client's name, SSN, or implied endorsement. No access, no authority, no financial apps linked to his accounts. Ever. Owen slid in the safety net. And a stipulated judgment held in escrow. If payments miss by more than 5 days, judgment enters for the unpaid balance plus fees. No arguments later about what we all understood today. Sullivan's mouth made a thin line. He asked for a caucus. They disappeared into the small room that smells like coffee and bargaining. I counted the ceiling tiles and decided there were more than there used to be when I was a younger man. When they returned, he carried the same paper but a different face. We accept the schedule, the sale by 30 days, the structural changes, the counseling, and a family meeting, he said. We'll agree to the stipulated judgment language. He glanced at my son and then at me. One request. In the apology and in the settlement, we ask that you not use the word theft. It's a charged label and not a legal conclusion we're reaching here. I let the word sit in the center of the table. Busy and useless. Then I nodded once. Fine, I said. We don't need stage words. We need clear ones. I tapped the sentence I'd written. I used retirement funds for personal purposes without authorization. That's the name. It's accurate. It will do. My son's eyes found mine then, finally. There was water in them and something trying to stand up. Okay, he said. We wrote dates where blank spaces had been. We added wire instructions, the dealer's payoff number, the make and model, as if we were listing a guest, not a car. We penciled in 10 business days for the first transfer, 30 for the sale, 6 months for the schedule, 45 for dissolution. Mara drew a line for signatures. Sullivan drew his breath. We signed with pens that weren't on chains. The mediator gathered copies like a careful librarian, gave us our own stack to carry home. The order from court stayed in place, like a gentle hand on a shoulder, until the last box was checked. On the sidewalk, the late light made office windows look like small ponds. My son walked a half step behind me, the way children do when they're not sure which side to choose. Dad, he said, voice roughened by a day too long. Thank you. Use the counselor, I said. Use the calendar. Use the truth. Names aren't for humiliation. They're for memory. You call a thing what it is so next time you recognize it earlier and turn the other way. The flatbed arrived at 10 with a sound like a zipper on a winter coat. Metal teeth. Sure and final. Neighbors did what neighbors do, watered already, wet lawns, checked mail that hadn't come yet, let their eyes drift. The sedan looked smaller on the truck than it had in the driveway, as if dignity and height were related. A dealer rep with a clipboard took a picture from each corner, then held out a key fob gloved in a tiny plastic bag. My son placed his palm under it, lifted, and the bag made that little crinkle you hear when something new becomes used. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the street, either. He watched the ratchet straps cross the tires like belts on a passenger who'd fallen asleep. Payoff confirmed. The rep said, reading from his phone, Lien release on receipt. You'll get an email and a letter. Business words, polished to no shine. The driver eased the winch, steel sang. The car rose onto its last stage like a magician's final prop, then turned at the curb and was gone. The space it left behind brighter than it had been an hour earlier. A neighbor's dog barked once and decided against a second opinion. My son's wife stood at the screen door with her arms crossed like she was cold and couldn't find a sweater. At home, the dish by my front door held nothing but pennies and a church bulletin. The spare fob was already in a manila envelope headed back to the dealer. The house exhaled. I poured coffee I didn't sweeten and set the mug on the yellow pad where I'd written dates like fence posts. At 10:07 a.m., my phone buzzed with the kind of message you don't swipe away. Incoming wire credit, 22,500 odor. The memo line said what it needed to. Settlement reimbursement 1 of 6, and nothing it didn't. I opened the retirement account on my laptop and watched the number step forward the way a tired man takes a stair. 1, then the next, then the next. I printed the advice because paper behaves itself and walked it to the kitchen table where the envelope had become a book. then a binder. Finally, something thinner labeled UNBUND. Mai at the branch would have smiled at the deposit advice. Denton would have nodded like a man checking whether he already knew was coming. I didn't go show them. Not everything needs witnesses. Some victories are best when they fit in a file folder. In the afternoon, I drove to the high school and asked for the counselor, whose office still smelled like pencil shavings and courage. I want to start something small, I said, laying out a single page I'd typed the night before. The Hera's mother's name, Small Step Scholarship, 2,000 this year, to a senior who keeps a B average while working a job or caring for family. Trade school or community college, no essays about the moon. Just a brief note from a supervisor or a grandparent. Preference for kids who buy their own textbooks and still bring home sliced bread. Anonymous, she asked. Not exactly, I said, and felt the words find the right shape. In her name, she was the one who saved coupons in a plastic bin and made pot roasts last until Thursday. If I'm receipting, I want her hands on the packet. We set up an account at the credit union. A little fund that would get a slice of every reimbursement. Owen would shake his head at the math. Mara would call it legal but correct. I wrote the first check and watched the ink dry like a field after rain. When I told my son, I did it without ceremony. A portion goes to a scholarship with your mother's name on it, I said. It's not a punishment. It's a planting. He nodded, eyes doing a kind of math you don't learn in business school. He didn't argue. He didn't thank me, either. Some news isn't for replies. That night the cold D-sack sounded like it always has, sprinklers ticking, a screen door clapping somewhere down the block, the refrigerator in my kitchen clearing its dependable throat. Cutting a loss isn't walking away from ground, it's making room in the dirt for something better to take root. I closed the binder, turned out the kitchen light, and let the dark do its work. 2 eggs over easy rye toast, coffee black, the kind of order your mouth can place even if your heart is elsewhere. The bell over the diner door gave its practice ding, and a waitress slid a laminated menu under my elbow, as if I hadn't already memorized it 30 years ago. Chrome trim, a jukebox that never grew up, truckers wearing yesterday's dust. I opened my yellow pad and wrote a letter to a man I knew well 1 year ago. Dear me, I began. You think love is a tide that lifts everything without noticing what it carries away. You think saying yes faster than you read is kindness. You think you can hand over keys without first checking which doors they open. You'll call it trust. It is partly. It is also laziness dressed as virtue. You will learn to separate the two. The eggs arrived slipping on their own light like small suns. I underlined the next line slowly, the way you underline a truth you wish you'd heard sooner. Put fences around your generosity. Not to keep love out, but to keep it from trampling the garden it's supposed to grow. I listed the little acts that could have changed the weather. Insist on branch. Only wires before the storm. Never check a box you're still arguing with. Make sure every family bucket has a lid with your hand on it. I didn't write about court or orders or men named Sullivan. I wrote about Tuesday evenings and permission slips, and how being a father had made me believe I could muscle reality into goodness by wanting it hard enough. I let the coffee go cold and asked for a refill. The waitress poured like a nurse topping off an IV. I wrote one more sentence and boxed it in blue ink. The mistake is not loving. The mistake is thinking love doesn't need a latch. I closed the pad. I took out my phone and typed a message that didn't practice its own courage. Breakfast. My treat.
No money talk, just us.
The 3 dots came and went like a shy swimmer. Okay, where he wrote. I sent the address and a picture of the red vinyl booth so he couldn't mistake the place or the idea. He arrived in a sedan the color of rain. Only now it was a loaner from the dealer while the sale papered through. He sat across from me. We ordered again, pancakes for him. Bacon he didn't need, coffee he did. We talked about the time he tried out for pitcher and discovered he was really an outfielder, about the late night burritos we ate on the garage steps when the refrigerator died, about his mother's insistence on thank you notes and how they taught him the difference between gratitude and apology. When the check came, I left cash under the sugar caddy and didn't stand up yet. I wrote to myself, I said, tapping the pad, about how I mistook love for permission. He stared at the napkin dispenser like it might give him better words. I thought helping meant moving fast, he said. I thought being a son meant fixing things you didn't fix. I fixed what I knew how to fix, I said. Lights on. Oil changed. Coupons clip. I didn't fix limits because I thought we didn't need them. That's on me. He breathed, shallow then deeper. I'm going to the counselor, he said, a little defensive, a little hopeful. First session Thursday. Good, I said. Ask the hard questions. Don't treat it like an errand. We stood in the parking lot and the diner door dinged for somebody else. Trucks sighed. A bus hissed. Two birds argued over a French fry and solved nothing. I put a hand on his shoulder, not heavy, not light. Forgiveness, I said, who's in erasing the ledger. We still have dates and wires and a scholarship with your mother's name on it. Forgiveness just clears a lane so truth can get through without hitting traffic. He nodded once. The small kind that matters. He got back in the car that wasn't his anymore and drove away like a person who had places to be that weren't exits. I went back inside for a to-go cup, left an extra $1 under the cup's shadow, and tucked the letter to last year's me behind the plastic sleeve of the day's receipt. Some notes you keep where you can find them on an ordinary Thursday next to crumbs and coffee rings, the places where fathers actually live. He texted a photo before the sun had decided. A crumpled schedule taped to a break room corkboard, Satu 723, his name highlighted in yellow that had bled through the paper. I'll cover my part, he wrote. No emojis. The kind of sentence you send when you want the words to do the work. I stared at the image until the thumbtacks looked like little compasses pointing back to basics. I typed OK. Good. Then I put the phone face down and got to work on my own piece. The sheet was plain on purpose. Family finance rules. 12 lines in a font that doesn't ask to be liked. I printed it on the same cheap paper that's carried this whole year. Paper behaves itself. No transfers without both signatures in person. Branch-only wires. New payees 4 to 8 hour cool-off callback. No entities using my name assess enter family implied. No credit cards paid from shared funds. Every agreement has an end date and a receipt. We talk before we sign. Passwords are not favors. If you're unsure, say it out loud. We do not front from retirement. Apology is not an instrument. Kindness keeps a ledger. I carried the page to the kitchen and pinned it to the refrigerator with the same 2 orange magnets that once held his campus photos. Smiling boy under a hoodie. Snow on a railing behind him. The oranges still gripped. The rules looked smaller than I expected and bigger than I felt. The house settled around the new sign the way a body settles around a stitch. The clock kept its chewing pace. A neighbor dragged a trash can with the careful violence that empty plastic makes. I poured coffee and didn't sweeten it. Old habit, new morning. The phone buzzed against the table, face down. I let it buzz once more so I wouldn't teach myself to jump. When I turned it over, the screen wore a tone I'd learned to respect. Incoming wire credit $2,500, settlement reimbursement 2 of 6. No confetti, no fanfare, just a number stepping into its place. I printed the advice, slid it into the UW&D binder, and added today's date to the spine with a piece of masking tape, the way garages label boxes that still have life in them. Then I took a second copy of the rules and folded it into an envelope addressed to him. Not to threaten, to remember, to give him something that behaves itself when everything else forgets. He texted again at lunch, plastic fork, styrofoam clamshell. Eggs scrambled until they forgot they were eggs. Counselor says I should practice saying numbers out loud before I move them, he wrote. Feels dumb. Helps. I told him dumb things built this house coupons in a binder. A washing machine paid in 18 equal bites. A man who learned to like black coffee because sugar cost more than he wanted to spend. In the afternoon I walked to the high school and asked how the scholarship announcement would be made. Morning bulletin, the counselor said. We'll say her name slow. I nodded. Seeds need voice too. Back home, I read the rules once more, not to memorize them but to admit I needed them as much as he did. Saying no at the right time is a way of saying yes to your own name. The rest is calendars and receipts, and the quiet work of not needing to be right out loud. At dusk the coal D-sack did its ordinary miracles. Sprinklers, a screen door, the first porch light pretending to be a star. I didn't write the end, I wrote the date. Then I let time do what it does best, keep going. Thank you for staying with me to the last line. Stories don't fix bank ledgers, but sometimes they steady a hand long enough to draw a boundary. If this one gave you a word, a plan, or just a breath, thank you for lending me your time. If you're walking through something similar, remember, write down dates. Paper behaves itself. Freeze what leaks. Access is oxygen. Ask for help without shame. Quiet is a strategy, not surrender. Boundaries are love with a spine. If this spoke to you, subscribe to Dad's Last Revenge, like the video, and share it with someone who needs a steadier voice today. In the comments, finish this sentence. A boundary I'll set today is da-dow. Your sentence might be the rope someone else grabs. This is Dad's Last Revenge, where dignity gets the last word. See you in the next story.